Okay, those are easier to follow because they're all separate. But when I get down to moving my head and neck, it can be a multiple spinal nerve segments. So right here, that's a single pair. So this would either be a myotome or a dermatome. But as soon as this mixes with this, which mixes with this, now it's a plexus, moves on down, and then it divides into cutaneous nerves, including all of these, and now it's more specific. This is a lot more specific than what this is. And so they can go back and they can find out, what does the ulnar nerve innervate? It's not the same as what one single pair. Is that making sense? Nope.
I have a question on what I'm not getting is single pair of spinal nerves. So that it's like this whole part of my arm here is giving sensory information to one set of spinal nerves.
Just on that dermatome pattern.
But how does one nerve cover such a large area without being a plexus?
Because that's what the nerves do. Okay? let me show you with colors. Here's C1 nerve. I know, but it's there.
Okay.
It's there.
Okay? Here's C2.
Okay.
Where's the black? There it is. Here's C3. And they have been able to follow a single spinal pair. Don't ask me how they do it. But they can follow C1 all the way down and follow what it innervates. And it's just one little piece. C2, they can follow and find out that just C2 goes and innervates here. And then C3 starts to move down the arm. I'm sorry, still on the neck. C4 is up here. C5 is here. C6 is there. 7 gets out into 8, gets out into here. So I got like 4. Look down at the end of the fingers. See, there's C6, C7, and C8. All down in here.
So it's not just one fat nerve running down. It branches out to little pieces
Yes.
of the same nerve.
So what happens is I get this C1 nerve, which you can barely see, that comes out, that branches in with that branches in with this, and now I get this big nerve, which is the plexus. Okay? Then all of a sudden, the radial nerve, which we've never talked about before, gets created out of this mishmash of a multiple, and it branches off and becomes now the radial nerve, which is a cutaneous nerve, which is a combination of multiple spinal segments, but not all of it. Okay, and then out of that we also get another nerve that wasn't evident before, that is now the ulnar nerve. And it branches off to become its thing. Is that helping? Okay, so we get C1, which is yellow, C2 is green, C3 is black. They've been able to figure out what C1 all by itself innervates, and what C2 innervates by itself, and what C3 innervates by itself. Then they branch together, become a plexus, then they move on out and become cutaneous nerves. They've also been able to figure out what the radial nerve does. Remember, we gave you what all radial nerves, but if you look at the myotome, it's not just one part. It's an overlap of a couple of multiples. So now it's giving me a different map. Okay, last time, okay? And then we got to move on.
Yeah.
First of all, do you understand? No, it's confusing, but I can't keep doing it over and over and over. Okay, we've done it for a half hour now. I need to do it one more time. See if it happens. A single pair of spinal nerves. Sensory and motor. C2. It goes to just one small little space. Then C3 goes to one small little place. We combine those together because they merge together and they become a cervical plexus. Now it's like C1 to C5 become one big nerve. Then it branches off to axillary, musculocutaneous, radial, median, ulnar. Each of those is a cutaneous nerve made up of multiple spinal segments still. And it innervates something different than just the single pair would innervate. C1 is only going to, C2, because it's the easiest one to see on there. C2 is only going to innervate there, but part of C2 merges with C1 and 2 and 3 and becomes the radial nerve also as it further moves down the arm. And it becomes a cutaneous nerve that only innervates a few specific muscles or skin, which is bigger out here than what C1 by itself will innervate, or C2 by itself will innervate. So a single pair is going to do a small area, both derma and myo. Derma for skin, myo for muscle and motor. But that merges with C2 and 3 and other nerves to be a big nerve, has no definition still. It's just C1 to C5, all merged together. Then pieces of C1 and 2 go to make musculocutaneous nerve. And now we make it a name. But it's not just a single spinal nerve. It's multiples at that point.
Think of it like your hair and then you
Just
Well,
a
I know, but
second.
I don't understand how the end of the braid is innervated by a single hair at top.
But stop and think exactly what you said. Take a hair from here and pull on it.
Yeah.
Feel it? Take a hair from down here and pull on it. You feel it? Those are single spinal nerves. But if I pull on both of them at the same time, can you feel the difference between the two?
Yeah, it pulls
Not
another
as much.
area, but
So it's a bigger area. And now this is only innervating these. This is only innervating these. But if I braid them together and I pull on all of it, it's a multiple and it feels different in my scalp, doesn't it? That's the same thing. That is it. Single spinal nerves only are limited on what they innervate. But I mix them with a couple of them, make a brand new nerve, and I call it the radial nerve. And it's still a mix of a combination of spinal roots that have now merged into one and become a radial nerve. And they can follow that radial nerve all the way down. They can tell you exactly what it does. And if it follows just the map of the radial nerve, then they're going to treat it down here and figure the block is somewhere down here. But if they find the problem is staying to a myotome or a dermatome, they're going to treat it up here. Yes, they'd start looking for bulges or some problem or pathology at the spine because it's just following the myotome or dermatome pattern. But if it follows the cutaneous nerve pattern, they'll treat it distal from where that nerve originates from this. A little better. A little better. And just keep going over it. All it's saying is that a myotome is one pair of roots going to muscle. A dermatome is one pair of spinal nerves coming from a sensory. We move those together, make them a mixed, combine them with other mixed nerves, becomes a plexus, then it branches to cutaneous nerves,
Okay.
built from multiple spinal nerves. And it helps in diagnosing if the problem is distal from the spinal cord or if it's at the spinal cord. And there's different maps. Understand derma and Maya? Yay. We'll come back to it. Nuclei and ganglia. 12. Sacral plexus. Should be just a few more pages back where we were. Page 442. Bless you.
You're sitting on
Ciao.
one page?
442. Sacral plexus arises from ventral rami because we don't have dorsal that make plexuses. Of L4 to S4. Pelvis and posterior limb entirely innervated by branches of the sacral plexus. Yeah, LA looks. Now look at page 443 and see L4, L5, S1 all the way down to S4. Those are roots, right? And those L4 if you look at L4 as far as a dermatome or myotome, it's the medial calf. Okay, if you just go one more page. See it, L4? Medial calf. That's what a single nerve, L4, is going to dermatome and myotome. Dermatome being what?
Skin.
And myotome being
Muscle.
the muscle. Okay? But now look at the sciatic nerve. Back on page 443. And the sciatic nerve is actually made up of branches of L4 to S3. See it? L4 to S3. All of those single spinals merge together, and then they break off to create a cutaneous nerve known as the sciatic nerve. Look how big that nerve is. But that's not just one spinal nerve pair. It tells you off to the side the sciatic nerve is made up of L4 to S3. So all of those spinal nerves have to blend together in order to make the cutaneous nerve we call the sciatic nerve, which then runs down and innervates specific muscles that overlap the dermatome myotome. Because see, it's a whole bunch of nerves woven together. Is that making sense? Look at what sciatic nerve, and then look what it says as it does. The longest nerve of the body. And actually, we're going to put this part down. The sciatic nerve.